The road to NFL stardom is rarely smooth, and for Jaxon Smith-Njigba, it was anything but. He fell in the draft because of injury. Then, when he finally stepped foot onto an NFL gridiron, he was stuck behind a couple of veterans and franchise favorites. But you can't keep guys like JSN down for long. The former Buckeye is destroying his opponents in 2025, completely flipping the script. And not just exceeding expectations, but hunting for records that we previously thought were untouchable. This is the version of Jaxon Smith-Njigba the NFL never wanted to see. Jaxon Smith-Njigba first entered public consciousness as a 5-star recruit joining one of the absolute powerhouses of the college game, the Ohio State Buckeyes. Despite an outstanding high school career, Smith-Njigba's OSU tenure would have to take a backseat that freshman season, partly due to the COVID-19 pandemic, but also due to the crop of NFL-ready talent on that Buckeyes team already, including Garrett Wilson and Chris Olave. However, his opportunity would arrive in his sophomore season, and when it did, he absolutely made the most of it. JSN would go on to break the Ohio State single season with 9 touchdowns. The cherry on top of an already epic campaign came in the season finale as OSU faced off against the Utah Utes in the 2022 Rose Bowl. Smith-Njigba went nuclear, catching 15 passes for a staggering 347 yards and 3 touchdowns. His 347 yards are still an FBS Bowl record and good for 5th all-time in any collegiate game. This performance and season launched Smith-Njigba into the national spotlight and right to the top of receiver prospects for the 2023 draft. But the 2022 season would not go as planned, as he dealt with a hamstring injury that limited him to just 3 appearances. Despite entering the 2023 draft with just 23 games under his belt, Smith-Njigba was considered one of the top receiver talents and an expected late first round to early second round pick. He received endless praise from analysts for his fundamentals, like his elite route running, soft hands, agility, and yards after catch potential. In college, his route running is what stood out the most, especially when operating in the slot. His ability to quickly change direction and lose his man on a perfectly maneuvered route gave him countless open looks, culminating in his very productive 2021 season. But others pointed out that his raw athletic tools might not be up to NFL standards. Smith-Njigba is not particularly tall or fast for a receiver, and some teams were understandably worried about how his game would adapt to the NFL level. While Smith-Njigba was more than capable of lighting up college corners, jumping up to face NFL talent is a whole other story, and many before have failed when taking on the task. But despite these perceived athletic shortcomings, his upside was certainly very enticing. So it came as no surprise that he ended up being the first receiver taken, as the Seattle Seahawks selected him with the 20th overall pick in the draft, right in front of 2 other highly rated receiving talents in Quentin Johnson and Zay Flowers. His selection by the Seahawks was significant, as he became the first receiver to be picked in the first round by the organization since 2001, emphasizing their desire to invest in what was an already strong receiving room. This seemed like the perfect landing spot for Smith-Njigba. He was joining a team with 2 established receivers that would allow him to take up his preferred slot position and learn from his 2 teammates, Tyler Lockett and DK Metcalf. The Seahawks were also a team that seemed bound to build on the successful 2022 campaign that saw Geno Smith break out. Smith-Njigba was looking like the final piece to a very good offense, filling in a gap of need in the slot while also being in the perfect place to elevate his game further. But once he finally saw the field wearing the Seahawks navy and green, Smith-Njigba struggled to make an impact on the field and even get the ball in his hands. Obviously, a big part of this was because both Tyler Lockett and DK Metcalf were viewed as very reliable targets for Smith, but as expected, he also needed some time to adjust to the speed and physicality of the NFL. He also wasn't helped by a Seattle offense that took a major step backwards from 2022. Geno Smith and the offensive line struggled with consistency, and this affected the output of all of the Seahawks receivers. Smith-Njigba would finish the season with a respectable 63 receptions for 628 yards and 4 touchdowns. While he failed to impress in any single game statistically, he maintained a consistent output throughout, and the season was primarily an opportunity for him to adapt to the NFL level and learn. His form was also indicative of the rest of the Seahawks' offensive output as the team slumped to a 9-8 record and missed the playoffs in what would be Pete Carroll's final season as coach in Seattle. The 2024 season would bring about a new opportunity for Smith-Njigba. There was plenty of change in Seattle, including the arrival of head coach Mike Macdonald. With a full season of NFL play under his belt, this new season presented an opportunity for Smith-Njigba to evolve and establish himself as a key member of the roster. In Week 2 against the New England Patriots, he would have somewhat of a breakout game, as he amassed over 100 receiving yards for the first time in his NFL career, showing his full range of talents, running crisp routes, and posing a serious threat after the catch. Although he didn't tally a touchdown, he played a key role in the overtime win. The Seahawks' form saw no major improvements over the previous season, as despite a 3-0 start, they would drop their next 3 games and find themselves at 4-5 by their bye week. But Smith-Njigba's play did begin to see improvement, and he would truly arrive in Week 9 against the Los Angeles Rams. He put up 180 receiving yards on 7 catches and scored 2 touchdowns in an overtime loss. He was becoming a more central component of the offensive scheme, resulting in more touches and more opportunities for him to display his abilities. He was also seeing a lot more time on the outside in formations, showing off a wider skill set than in his previously preferred inside slot role, proving that his future in the league wouldn't just rely on working the inside of the field. Despite once again starting the season as the 3rd receiver on the depth chart, pretty soon he was establishing himself as Geno Smith's preferred option, going on to lead the team in receptions and receiving yards, finishing the season with 100 catches for 1,130 yards and 6 touchdowns. Despite the Seahawks once again missing the playoffs, Smith-Njigba had shown a big leap in production from his rookie year. He was now looking like the wide receiver 1 of the future, and someone the Seahawks could build around. And this was solidified in the 2025 offseason as the Seahawks released Tyler Lockett and traded away DK Metcalf, signaling a significant change for the offense. These would not be the only changes to the roster in the offseason, though. The Seahawks also traded Geno Smith, bringing in Sam Darnold to lead the offense, which initially brought more questions than answers. In doing this, Seattle looked more like a team gearing up for a rebuild than one on the verge of challenging for a playoff spot. They did bring in veteran Cooper Kupp, which bolstered the receiving core, adding some much-needed depth behind JSN. So, going into 2025, the Seahawks were a question mark out of the NFC West. They looked unlikely to compete in a tough division, and would maybe be looking to build for the future rather than pose any real playoff threat. But once the 2025 season kicked off, everything changed. Smith-Njigba and his Seahawks entered the season like they had a point to prove. Against all expectations, they have turned out to be one of the best teams in the league, proving to be major players in the NFC West and the NFC in general. They've been dispatching opponents with ease while staying competitive in their few losses. So, why has this Seahawks team that most analysts predicted to be middling to bad suddenly become a Super Bowl contender? It all starts with the offense and the explosion in production that Smith-Njigba has undergone. He's had a career year, reaching new highs in receiving yards and touchdowns, and even managed to break the single-season receiving yards record for the Seahawks franchise in Week 12. With the team bringing in Darnold to replace Geno Smith, who had been a crucial member of the team for several years, Smith-Njigba has made himself indispensable to this offense, taking on a leadership role. He's seamlessly transitioned from being the 3rd receiver on the depth chart in his rookie year to now being the linchpin of the entire offense. JSN's technical abilities have never been in doubt. It was more so whether his physical limitations as a receiver would allow him to showcase these abilities at a high level in the NFL. But the development that he's gone through in his 3 years in the league shows that he belongs in an elite club of NFL receivers. In the past 2 years, he has shown a willingness to expand his route tree, proving himself at running short, deep, intermediate, and anything else that the coaching staff asks of him. His adaptation to playing more on the outside has also made him a much more well-rounded receiver and keeps cornerbacks honest. His 3 years of experience have been invaluable. He's able to read the game and set up defenders so much more easily now, giving us this insane output that we are seeing in 2025. And it's a credit to both him and Sam Darnold that they have been able to build up such elite chemistry in such short time. It really has been remarkable to see such a big leap in production from year 2 to year 3. His ability to impact games has also taken a big leap, as he has more games with over 100 receiving yards in 2025 than he had in his entire career prior. As you might expect, there are a few contenders for his best career game from the 2025 season so far. One would be Week 6 against the Jaguars, where he caught 8 passes for 162 yards and a touchdown. He nearly replicated these numbers in another performance against the Tennessee Titans, where he had a stat line of 8 catches for 167 yards and 2 touchdowns. If JSN keeps this same pace going for the remainder of the season, he would only finish around 90 yards behind Calvin Johnson's single-season receiving yards record, which would give him the third best single-season receiving yards tally ever at 1,892. And with a few extraordinary games along the way, he could potentially challenge for the record. If there was one aspect of Smith-Njigba's games that you would look at and say needs some work, it would be his scoring. He has steadily increased his season totals year by year, but for an elite caliber receiver, you would probably expect a little bit more on that front. But this is where some of those lacking physical traits come in, as taller receivers will have more success in the red zone, and faster players will be able to run away from opponents after catching the ball. But if there's anything JSN has proven in his 3 years in the league, it's that he will continue to hone his game and improve, and it would not be surprising to one day see him hauling in 10+ touchdowns per season. Jaxon Smith-Njigba entered the NFL with a high upside, but an underwhelming physical toolset. He came to a team that seemed like they were on a positive trajectory with a receiving core that perfectly complemented his game. He took some time to get going, but he has now exploded onto the scene, leading the line for Seattle and producing at a near historical rate. Smith-Njigba's trajectory seems like it has no ceiling, and this could be the start of one of the most productive careers in league history. JSN and the Seahawks have been the big surprises of the 2025 season, and will enter the playoffs with high expectations. But will they be a legit contender out of the NFC? Will Jaxon Smith-Njigba actually challenge the single-season receiving record? Let us know in the comments below.